the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. This show is about Plymouth County real estate. This show is being taped in March. We're talking about the February recordings at the Registry of Deeds. Our headline for the month was Mortgages Have Big Drop and Foreclosures Are on the Rise. I have a great guest with me in the second and third segment of the show. We're doing something a little different this time. We're talking about, because of the St. Patrick's Day holiday and so many people of Irish descent in Plymouth County, some of our great notable land records of Irish descendants that have lived in Plymouth County. So first we're going to go to deeds, the number of properties that sold during the course of February. There were 555 deeds recorded in February, less than the 661 in January, 2% less than last year. And you must remember last year, 2021, we had the highest number of recordings since 2005. So year to date, they're down 5%. The sales occurred throughout Plymouth County. From Abington to Whitman, there were properties sold. Plymouth and Brockton were the highest number of sales in those communities. One of the stories we've talked about quite a bit was mortgages, because there were a lot of people refinancing their property, and that has come to a slow pace. There were only 1,747 mortgages recorded in February, less than the 1,920 in January, 45% less than last February, but year-to-date down 2%. Again, a lot of people have already refinanced, and the mortgage going on record are for purchases of homes, not so much for refinances. We always follow foreclosure issues very closely. In 2008, we had a very difficult time with foreclosures. There was a moratorium during COVID, not allowing foreclosures, but they're starting to pick up again. You don't necessarily see it in foreclosure deeds. Foreclosure deeds are when someone loses their property to a lender, usually for non-payment. The foreclosure deeds in February were down 29% from last year. When you do see it in foreclosure notices, they're starting to pick up. There were 35 foreclosure notices in February, more than the 30 in January, 195% more than last February. So we are going to see an uptick in foreclosures. We know that. You'll also see an image of foreclosures by communities, and you can see there are a lot of zeros there. Again, from Abington to Whitman, foreclosure deeds and notices were very low. I also just want to let you know there's a free service on our website you can sign up for. So if anything gets recorded against your property, it'll be sent, a notice will be sent to you by email. It's free, it's a good service, and I strongly advise you to do that. We talked in the past about how everything's changed at the registry. Our electronic recording is huge. 80% of our documents come in over the internet for recorded land, and 50% for land court. So I've, again, a great guest coming on in the second segment of the show, Tim White. He's the Assistant Register of Deeds. We'll be talking about the many notable people and places connected with the Irish who settled in Plymouth County. Thank you. We'll see you in the next segment. Welcome back to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. We're going to do something a little differently for this show, although I do want to mention to people that if you haven't signed up for our fraud alert, go onto our website, put in your name and your email, and if anything gets recorded, you'll get a notice that something's been recorded. If it isn't something you expect, you ought to take a look at it, just to kind of make sure nobody's putting anything in your chain of title. I have a guest on this segment of the show that's been here before, Tim White, who's the Assistant Register of Deeds for Plymouth County. In this segment of the show, we've always talked about the holidays, Mardi Gras on the 1st, Ash Wednesday on the 2nd, the Snow Row in Hull on the 5th, National Oreo Day on the 6th, International Women's Day on the 8th, Daylight Savings Time began the 13th, St. Patrick's Day will be coming up on the 17th, beginning of spring the 20th, Greek Independence Day the 25th, Vietnam War Veterans Day on the 29th. And as I mentioned, we're going to do something a little differently because so many people in Plymouth County are of Irish descent. We decided to highlight the many of our notable land records that have Irish connections. So, Tim, you can join in as we go.
Sounds good.
I know you know a lot of these stories too. So there was a mayor of Boston who was known as a bit of a rogue, James Michael Curley. He was elected as mayor 4 times in 4 different decades, but he had a lot of successes and a lot of failures. He was known as the mayor of the poor.
And if I'm not mistaken, one of the times he was elected mayor, he was in jail.
Yes. And he was in jail twice along the way.
Yeah.
One time he was in jail for taking an exam to get one of his supporters a job, and then he used as a theme in his next election, "I did it for a friend." Different times.
Also known as the Purple Shamrock.
Yes.
And there's a wonderful book called The Purple Shamrock on James Michael that is definitely a worthwhile read. Great history of the city of Boston.
And I know there's another great book that is not him, but is based upon his model, The Last Hurrah.
The Last Hurrah, yep.
And there's a bar. There used to be a bar named The Last Hurrah. I'm not sure it's still around.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's still there either.
But anyways, so James Michael Curley owned a summer home in Hull, and one of our former employees, James Michael Tobin, brought this forward for us to include in our notable land record collection, and thanks to Jim for that. So the next one is another one that people know very well, John Honey Fitzgerald. That was also brought forward by James Michael Tobin of Hull.
So the very beginning of the Kennedy legacy.
Yeah, Honey Fitz was a congressman and mayor of Boston, but he was the grandfather of John F. Kennedy.
Right.
And his daughter, Rose, married Joe Kennedy, and a number of their children went on to elected office, including Ted Kennedy, who was a senator from Massachusetts, after John Kennedy had been the senator of Massachusetts before he became president, and Robert Kennedy became the senator from New York.
After being the Attorney General.
After being the Attorney General under John Kennedy. So Honey Fitz also had a summer home in Hull, was the first American-born Irish Catholic mayor of Boston. So in those days, in the 1900s, many people from Boston would get out of the city of Boston in the summer months, and they ran a ferry across Boston Harbor to Hull. So a lot of those individuals had summer homes in Hull. Hull was more of a summer community then than a year-rounder, which it is now. But there's a lot of, connections to that.
Down at the Carousel in Hull, there's still a number of fabulous historic pictures showing the ferries and the hotels that were in existence back in the day of Honey Fitz.
And everyone of my generation anyways remembers Paragon Park.
That's right, yeah.
So the next notable with an Irish connection is a fellow by the name of Mickey Cochran. Mickey Cochran grew up in Bridgewater. He's the only person from Plymouth County elected to Cooperstown Baseball's Hall of Fame. He was a fiery catcher, played in the era of Ty Cobb, and played for the Detroit Tigers, and was very well recognized. He was actually elected to Cooperstown after he was hit in the head by a pitch, knocked unconscious, and he never batted again in 1939. There's a plaque in his honor down at a park, a baseball field in Bridgewater, right along Route 18. But Mickey Cochran was certainly one of the greats.
He was Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Another one with Irish roots that, again, people of my generation would remember is Ken Coleman.
Can still hear his voice broadcasting the games.
Ken Coleman was the voice of the Red Sox, particularly during the impossible dream year, 1967, when the Red Sox were rated 100-1 to win the league championship, and they pulled it off.
On the final day of the season.
On the final day of the season, it gave birth to the Red Sox nation that we celebrate today. He narrated an audio tribute to the season, which many people still have. He served as a broadcaster for the Cleveland Indians, the Cleveland Browns, and the Cincinnati Reds, and then he became the second director of the Jimmy Fund and was a longtime supporter of the Jimmy Fund. And he was also inducted into the Red Sox Hall of Fame. Next, but not least, John L. Sullivan, a famous heavyweight boxer who, after his fighting days, settled on a farm in West Abington. John Lawrence Sullivan, known as the Boston Strong Boy, was the first modern heavyweight boxing champion, holding the title from 1882 to 1892. He was born in 1858 to Irish immigrants in Roxbury, and he fought under the modern Marquess of Queensberry rules, and he also was a last of the bare knuckle fighters.
The bare knuckle fighters, that's right.
So it's accepted that his only loss came at the hands of gentleman Jim Corbett. After he lost to Corbett, Sullivan said he would never fight again, and he retired, got married, he retired to a 60-acre farm on Hancock Street in Abington. And the Abington St. Patrick's Day Parade is this coming Sunday in the taping of the show, and they always have a display in celebration of John L. Sullivan.
Quite appropriate on St. Patrick's Day, right?
And the next image you're going to see is of John Boyle O'Reilly, another famous Irishman who had a summer home in Hull. John Boyle O'Reilly grew up in County Meath, Ireland. He enlisted in the British Army. He was convicted for trying to upset the British rule. He was called sent to a penal colony in West Australia. So he escaped the penal colony, eventually made his way to Boston. He became a leader in the Irish community in Boston and was the editor of the Pilot, and he bought a summer home in Hull. It was the Hunt Estate, and even today, that building is the Hull Public Library.
So the old Black Rose restaurant used to have placemats.
Black Rose in Boston.
In Boston, that would tell the story of a number of Irishmen that were banished to Australia and then who escaped and came to America. And you had editors, senators, congressmen, remarkable how charismatic and powerful these folks actually were, and it's no wonder that the Brits sent them down to Australia to get them as far away from influencing Ireland as possible.
Right. Well, John Boyle O'Reilly was so recognized as an intermediary person between the Irish and the Old Brahms because of his skills as a poet and his strength. So there was recognition by them to erect a monument to him in the Fenway section of Boston, and it's still there today. So if you're ever over by Fenway Park with some time to wander, that would be a good thing to go take a look at. And so not too far from us here at the Brockton Cable Access Station in City Hall Plaza is a monument to the next person. Billy McGonigal was a very famous baseball player. He was a son of Irish immigrants. He was a pioneer in the development of baseball. He was a former shoe worker, and he played baseball in the era when they didn't have gloves. So as the balls got tighter and tighter, catchers in particular were getting broken fingers from catching the ball. So Billy McGonigal took bricklayer's gloves and started using the gloves to deaden the ball, and that was part of the invention of the catcher's mitt.
Yeah.
So he's well known for that. And his playing days also, similar to Mickey Cochran, ended when he fractured his skull from a pitch, and then he became a manager. So he became a manager down in Brooklyn, New York. He became the manager of the Brooklyn Bridegrooms, who won back-to-back pennants. He won the American Association pennant 1 year as a manager, and then won the National League pennant, the only manager in history to win 2 pennants in back-to-back seasons for different leagues. And well recognized in America. So the Brooklyn Bridegrooms became the Brooklyn Dodgers, and now they're the Los Angeles Dodgers. So in 1990, when the Brooklyn Dodgers won the pennant and won in the World Series, they brought the McGonigal family out to Los Angeles to celebrate. He and his wife Mary and their 7 children lived at her homestead over nearby here in Brockton on Arch Street. He owned a bar and billiard parlor right in the shadow of City Hall in downtown Brockton. So one day when he was leaving the bar and billiard parlor, that was in the day of the transition from the horse and buggy and the automobile. Mm-hmm. So he was taking a horse and buggy back to his home a few blocks away, and an automobile came by, spooked the horse, turned it over, and he was injured, and he later died from those injuries. So quite a story. But if you ever go to Brockton City Hall or Brockton City Hall Plaza, there's a monument to him about 50 yards to the south of Brockton City Hall, and you can see his story.
And so do we know what the nickname Gunner came from?
From his arm. Because he was a catcher at the time. He was throwing out people whenever they tried to steal, and he got the nickname Gunner for having a great gun. Another baseball player who a lot of people probably don't know about, you may know because he ended up living in Hingham, where you're from.
Right.
Michael King Kelly managed and played baseball for the old Boston Bean Eaters. Nobody remembers the Bean Eaters. Michael Joseph King Kelly was born in New York, also the son of Irish immigrants. He was orphaned at 13 and worked in textile mills in New Jersey, was playing amateur baseball. He was signed to a professional contract at age 15 by the Cincinnati Reds. In his 16-year career, he played for Cincinnati, Chicago, New York, and Boston. He led the National League in batting twice and in runs scored and stolen bases 3 times. He was a colorful player. They actually had a song called Slide, Kelly Slide at the time. And he was also in that era when the rules were different, because back in those days, you didn't have to touch all bases when you get a hit. So he could run from first to third or first to second and home. And they didn't have to touch all the bases. So while playing in Boston, his Irish supporters bought him and his wife Agnes a home on Main Street in Hingham. He was posthumously elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. And then we have the famous Bailey's Garage in Abington, begun by the great Eddie Bailey, who moved his gas station to its present location. Now, the Irish parade, the St. Patrick's Day parade in Abington, actually officially starts from 9 Orange Street, if you can believe that. It has been named by the town unofficially St. Patrick's Square. So for over 70 years, the family-run business was run by his son, meeting the automotive needs of the people in Abington. And once a year, they have the St. Patrick's Day Parade. It was started by a bet between 2 friends at the local Knights of Columbus. And that first year, there were 10 vehicles owned by Irish-named businesses that rode in that, and they've done it every year since, except for the last couple of years with COVID.
And it's a lot bigger now than it was then.
It's a lot bigger than it was. And another notable Irish record, Anna Buckley, who was a senator from Brockton. She was orphaned at the age of 7, moved to Brockton. She lived in Ward 2, went to St. Patrick's High. She married Dan Buckley. They had 5 children together. She worked as an insurance agency, worked in the mayor campaign of Joe Downey, worked for Teddy Butchko, the state auditor, Frank Bellotti, and then she was elected to the city council, and she was elected state senator. She rose in the state senate, was deeply involved in the state national party, and the Fine Arts Center in Massasoit is named after her. The next notable record is the Memorial Building in Abington, the former Town Hall, now the Legion Building in Abington. It was the original high school, purchased in 1902, and in 1958, a senator running for re-election came down. He had actually been in Abington previously as a young congressman speaking to the Holy Name Society at the Memorial Building in the late 40s, and then came down when it was the town hall. 2 years later, John F. Kennedy was elected President of the United States. So currently it holds the Dorsey Post of the Legion, Veterans for the Vietnam Era, Richard Fitz chapter in the Abington VFW, and it's used by civic groups. And last but not least of our notable Irish records is Griffin's Dairy. Griffin's Dairy is another Abington. Abington had a lot of Irish immigrants and Irish families. Currently, the town of Scituate has the most Irish descendants. Plymouth County is one of the highest counties in America with Irish descendants. It's always been highest, one or two in the country. So that's why we have all these stories to tell. But Griffin's Dairy was a family-owned milk dairy. The farm was purchased by Lawrence and Annie Griffin. She was an Irish immigrant. They raised their 6 children on the working farm. It's currently owned by the town of Abington. It was purchased and is now Griffin's Farm Park. It has community gardens and many other activities. It has been the recipient of Abington's Community Preservation Fund. And now we're going to talk about, last but not least, as I'm losing my voice, our Plymouth Colony record, which, Tim, I know you've done a lot of work on.
Right, the Plymouth Colony records are remarkable historical documents that we are so fortunate to be charged with their maintenance and their actually display, I guess would be a good way to put it. These are the records of the original Pilgrims, and they're in their original handwriting. They've been preserved beautifully by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They have subject matter that ranges from the most bizarre laws that you'd ever hear. I mean, you can't consult with the devil or you're going to be punished. You can't sail a boat on Sunday or you'll be punished for sailing on the Lord's Day. And a number of other things along those lines, but they also have a lot of firsts that our country has, and I think one of the firsts that we're celebrating this month in our Plymouth Colony notable record is a record, one of the earliest laws authorizing the Plymouth Colony communities to elect select persons to run their towns. And I mean, you think about it, we have select persons throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts today in 2022, and it all started way back in the early 1600s.
Right, that's incredible. And those records are really fascinating. As COVID diminishes, as it has, we'll be allowing people to come down and visit us and take a look at some of those original handwritten records. They're incredible sources, and I think the point we're making with this record is they're the foundation for a lot of things that we do today, even though that was it, even before the United States Constitution.
We thought it would be appropriate right around town meeting time that we would recognize the role of the select person right. Going back to the last 400 years.
So I want to thank Lorna Greenbaker and Christine Richards from our office helped me put this show together. I want to thank Emma Reardon and Athena Grant for their help with the camera today. We take this show, we share it with cable providers throughout Plymouth County, and we tell the story about Plymouth County real estate and a little of our history. And have a happy St. Patrick's Day. Hope your celebration goes well. Be safe, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.